host, Roy. Of course, we do bring you a wide variety of guests and talk about a lot of diverse topics, and today is no different. I'm very excited to have Gordon Glenister with us. We're going to have a very robust conversation, I know, going forward. I've been looking forward to this for the last couple weeks. He is an influencer marketing strategist. He's the global head of influencer marketing at Branded Content Marketing Association. The CEO of Membership World. Gordon was formerly the Director General of the British Promotional Merchandise Association for 11 years, then launched his own membership consultancy in September 2018. Gordon is also the co-founder of the Top 100 Most Influential People Index, which is a product promoting eminent people in specific industries. He is also a well-known speaker on membership and influencer marketing. He is a keen traveler. He's a badminton player and looking forward to resuming both post-pandemic. Gordon, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to be with us.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Roy. Lovely to see you.
Yeah. Now, this is such an exciting topic because it's, with the advent of social media, I think it's blown up and we think of it, I'll say I think of it in a little different terms, but I'm going to let you explain. First off, just tell us, what is influencer marketing, kind of why it's important, how we can use it, and then also it's not necessarily new. And I'll let you tie that up for us.
Thanks, Roy, and thanks for the introduction. Shall I just tell you a little bit about my background as where I came from to actually be in this sort of space? Because I think it has some context. You mentioned that I'd been involved in the British Promotional Merchandise Association. Then I set up my own consultancy in 2018. But I'm still relatively new to the sector, actually, myself, only less than sort of 2 years. But my background has come from the sort of association world. And I really believed that there was nobody representing the sort of influencer marketing industry. It has had a mixed media profile, should I say. Yeah. Some people's vision of what an influencer is very different. So what I wanted to do was to launch an association in the UK that represented the industry. And that's what I did in 2019. Subsequently went on to write a book and also a podcast. So because of that, I did quite a lot of research into what influencer marketing was all about. And you know what? It's nothing new. It's just got a nice, shiny new name on it because fundamentally it's still word of mouth marketing, And we were just talking before this about Marlboro Man, weren't we? And Aunt Jemima, these were individual folks that we might have followed, even Coca-Cola using sort of Santa Claus. So, we trust the opinions of our friends, our families, or people in authority much more now than traditional advertising. In fact, there was a piece of research done, I think, from Business Insider or one of the big research organizations that said amongst Gen Zs, that very young audience, they trust traditional advertising to the extent of just 1%. Which is remarkably low. Influencer marketing is basically happens when an individual is involved in promoting a product or service, and that's it. The way I would determine an influencer is somebody that can affect a change in behavior of others through trusted opinion, knowledge, and content. So it's very simple in those terms. Anybody can actually become an influencer. And, when you look at some of the big names, the Kylie Jenner, the Kardashians, and all these well-known celebrities, of course, that was who we would have looked up to some time ago. But, of course, what we've now seen is a growth in what we call micro and nano influencers. And these are individuals that have got much smaller followings on social media. But what they have got is a passion and a cause for their their product or service or their genre.
Yeah.
And I mean, even a fly fishing expert that has 1,000 followers on Instagram could be an influencer,
Yeah.
because all of the people that are following that individual are absolutely interested in the content that fisherman is creating. And that's what I think is really exciting,
Yeah.
is how the range of different diversities of niches have populated for influencer marketing. And for brands, it's an amazing opportunity for them to tap in to those individual voices that can therefore amplify their brand message.
Yeah, and just as you were talking, I was thinking that, and I'll let you answer this, but more of a question is, so back in the day, it seems like, when we talk about the Marlboro Man, he was one guy that represented one product, one brand, where it seems like influencer marketing of today through social media, typically what I think about them is that they are people that have their own audience for some reason, for whatever content they're putting out there. We just happen to put our product out there for them to represent, or maybe they represent multiple products instead of just being totally in line with just one brand nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, what we're doing is, if you want to work with an influencer, you're buying into their audience.
Right.
And let's not forget that those, and by the way, a lot of them tend to prefer the word content creator as a sort of a term. But they will have taken time to develop that audience, and if it's engaged, in other words, they're very responsive, they're commenting and liking, they're being consistent with when they put out their content. It's not just one post every now and again. It's 2 or 3 times a week at a set time. They are like in a community. They want their audience to grow. They want them to be happy and engaged.
Yeah.
So that is, so when they try and create a brand collaboration, as they call it, they want to make sure that it aligns with their values. And that's super important, because sometimes brands that connect with influencers don't always get a response.
Yeah.
And the reason they don't always get a response is because for some reason, well, A, they might have communicated in the wrong way, or B, it's not what the influencer wants to do to promote it.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, something like 2/3 of them now will reject brand opportunities based upon their ethics.
Wow.
So if they don't feel that they have strong ethics,
Yeah.
like they look after their people, they are doing the right thing for the planet, or whatever, then they will reject them.
That's actually a pretty cool thing. I applaud them for that, for kind of doing the screening, because as we were talking through that, I was just thinking about the other part of this, is that as a person that wants to, well, before we even jump into that, I want to say there are two kinds of influencers. There's that person that maybe they've built their own audience doing different things. We could say like the Kardashians, or people that I think about, they're all over the place, but they're all over the place because of themselves, because of the things they've done to generate that. Now we can put our product with them for them to represent it, or placement, or however. That's one form. But the other form I think that we want to hit on a little bit too is that I could become an influencer with the content that I create, maybe for a lot smaller universe than somebody like the Kardashians, but still, for my industry, for my association, for my charity that I represent, or for my friends and family. Is that correct?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. In fact, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, that is a locksmith, somebody that just goes and fixes locks. And he was talking about marketing, and he was going to create some really cool videos about what he does in the course of his day.
Yeah.
So what ultimately you want to be, if you want to be an influencer, you've got to be the go-to person.
Right.
And being the go-to person that thinks about you and what you do for a reason, you have to have a purpose that people, I always say, a brand is what somebody says about you when you're not in the room.
Right. Yeah.
And it's very, very true.
Yeah.
And when you do, we were talking earlier when we were about TikTok, and TikTok is largely a younger platform up to the age of 30 or 40 per se. So us older guys maybe not on there, but you know what? I've seen
Yeah.
one or two lawyers on there that have really tried to create a different story that is non-stuffy, that is fun and quirky,
Yeah.
but super engaging. And they've got great audiences because what they're doing, they're breaking down the stereotypes, and they're educating a younger audience around the law, but doing it in a fun and engaging way.
Yeah, for full disclosure, before I brought Gordon on, I made him sign a release that he was not going to make me create a TikTok video on here with me up here dancing. So the audience will be safe from that. So let's talk about that. So the influencers screening products and brands that they're taking on, which I think that is so awesome. I really can't. I mean, I'm glad to hear that they're being particular about how they treat employees and their business processes. That's awesome. But let's talk about the other side of that coin. As a professional services, I need to be very careful who I select to represent me in that space as well. And then the other thing about everything is always great today, but let's just say they have a come apart or something goes bad for this influencer, 3-6 months from now. How does that wash back on me as somebody that's put my brand with them?
Yeah, well, that's an issue, of course, that exists in any shape when you're
Yeah.
using, because you're not dealing with a product, you're dealing with a human being, aren't they? And they
Right.
are prone to. I mean, look at Tiger Woods, for example.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods, a phenomenally successful individual, but he went through a really bad patch, didn't he? And of
Yeah.
course, lots of brands had to pull away from what was going on. I mean, all I would say though is you must do your due diligence
Yeah.
before you work with an influencer. You need to make sure that their follower base is authentic. There are
Yeah.
lots of tools out there, by the way, now that you can influencer platforms, that you can determine whether or not they bought any followers, because the last thing you want is
Yes.
you don't want an inauthentic audience.
Right.
And also, if you're, let's just say, your audience is very much Texas or American based, and you thought, oh, this is a great guy I want to work with, but actually, little do you know that 80% of his follower base is based in the UK.
Right. Yeah.
And if you particularly wanted to work with men more than you would women, then you need to make sure that the individual you're working with, his follower base is equally so, because
Okay.
that's what you're effectively buying into,
Yeah.
is that audience.
Yeah.
And that could be part of the conversation that you have with them at the early stage. Just want to have an understanding as to, I mean, sometimes they would share their insights with you, which you
Yeah.
can, of course, see on Instagram or whatever, any other platform. But also, there's lots of social media metrics
Yeah.
platforms that will allow you to do this. The other thing you need to make sure, though, Roy, is that somebody, they haven't worked for a competitor.
Okay.
Because what you want them to do is like, for example, it would seem somewhat inauthentic for somebody 1 minute to be promoting Coke and then Pepsi, a little later down the line.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It would mean that they're, the ideal scenario is for you to find an influencer where you can create a strong relationship that isn't just necessarily one-off campaign.
Yeah.
But ideally, you can look for, like a long-term, almost like ambassador program.
Yeah.
That's the growth at the moment. Lots of organizations are now looking to recruit influencers initially for campaigns, but then some of the best ones that really do resonate and deliver amazing results, to recruit them for longer-term ambassadors. And that's also good for the audience, by the way, because if they see if they see a brand being promoted by their favorite influencer once, yes, they're going to, they're going to react to it, but they're going to react to it a lot more if they see that post and video content consistently.
Yeah.
So, for example, brands like Boohoo, which is a big clothing brand, they will have Boohoo ambassadors, Pretty Little Thing ambassadors. Lots of big clothing companies and fashion brands now use this process.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I just want to make a note about the followers, and I will say that this is something I very luckily learned years ago, is that, I had a guy told me he could help me generate some, some traffic on some social media, and I said, great. And then all of a sudden, he was correct. He generated a ton of social media traffic. It just happened to be from a different continent on where I live. And then, it's like I told him, okay, these people are not my clients. They're never going to be my clients. So it's like, it was totally a vanity metric at that point. And anyway, it's a good lesson to learn. But going back to what you said is, if we do want to hire somebody else to do this, you need to check them out any way you possibly can to make sure that, because, I could have had a million of these followers, but they would not have been anybody that was going to buy a product based here out of the U.S. So very important.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So it's better that you have a smaller audience that's relevant,
yes,
and authentic,
yeah,
because so it's not, and that's why a lot of the big organizations now will hire influencers based on their engagement level, not necessarily. I mean, it's not that they don't disregard the follower base, but the engagement rate is where it's at.
Yeah. So with social media, it's so worldwide. In this space, are there will you find local influencers versus the big national ones? So I mean, I'm just thinking of a strategy that, well, if I've got a local product, maybe finding that local, but then also another strategy, instead of finding that one huge influencer, maybe you find, 4 or 5 strategically placed local geographic. Is that even a thing or a possibility?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sometimes when you're running a campaign, it's worth considering a mix of influence.
Yeah.
Maybe a larger one with a mid-tier group, and then a number of micro and nanos.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's really exciting about having a range of influencers is they are, and also involving these individuals, not just in the amplification stage, but in the content creation, so that you are, what could happen. In other words, trying to create a bit of an open brief, so that it's not so specific and tied down. So you are really allowing these individuals, which are very creative, by the way, to use their creativity and potentially come back to you with all sorts of exciting ways in which your brand story could be told and promoted. Because if you've got 10 of them, as opposed to just one, you've got 10 different. And also, I mean, I was talking to Pernod Ricard actually just last week about this. And they did some work with some of their influencers, and because of 1 or 2 of them that were outside their slight niche, they found a whole new audience of drinkers for their whiskey brands as a result of some of the work they've done with influencers. Yeah. So that was really exciting. But yes, definitely using local ones. Again, another conversation I had with Oxfam, big charity Oxfam. They use influencers really smartly, particularly in, I don't know if you have charity shops in the States. I can't remember. We have charity shops here where people can provide donated goods.
Oh, yes, we do.
You do.
Yes.
You do. Fine.
Yes.
Fine. Okay. So that's that's very specific, where they used local influencers to go into stores and perhaps put on some of these sort of historic avant-garde type clothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was really good. And of course they were able to promote that on the charity's local Facebook group, and it got it got a really great reaction because
Okay.
that particular item would only be available in that local store.
Right,
So you
right.
can see how working with something locally can be very successful.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny. I just wrote down the question as you were speaking about that is about the the content creation, and so the question was going to be these guys are creative, and I'm sure that they can help. But is this I guess in this world, is this something that we put in their hands and say, here's my brand and here's what I want to convey? You create the message, or do we take them a message to them and say, here's kind of what I want you to do? Or I guess it's probably a mix, but generally, how does that work?
It is best when it's a mix, as long as you've got a set of brand guidelines
Yeah.
and perhaps your sort of target audience, and some ideas of what you'd like to do, but not overly prescriptive,
Yeah.
and then allow them to just do their thing.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the video content I've seen with some of these fashion influencers just blows my mind. I
Yeah.
mean, the creativity, the tricks, it's bringing clothing and fashion to life. The other thing, of course, you can do is think about using links that attribute the influencer to a specific code. So maybe you want to give 10% off your product or service or something, where you can then work with the influencer so that they've got something that they can give to their followers. And of course, what that does is that it allows you to say you've got 10 or 15 influencers and they've all got their own tracking link code. You can then determine how successful each one has been about driving sales back to your website.
Okay. Interesting.
So again, very, very effective method of doing that. I mean, we shouldn't forget these individuals, are often. I mean, the average age of an influencer is 28,
Oh, wow.
and they are digital native.
Yeah.
So they're videographers, they're photographers, they're community builders, they're editors, they're script writers, they're bloggers. These are, if you think about the traditional way that you go and create like a television advert and how much money you'd involve, you'd have to have all these various people to put that together. Well, potentially you've got that in one person.
Yeah.
If you find the right individual, and that's what I think is so amazing is finding these. And what I love is the authenticity of it.
Yeah.
And there are some great examples. I don't know if you're into yachts and super yachts. But there's a guy actually called the Yacht Guy, and he's got hundreds of thousands of followers. And he always just loved super yachts. So he started many years ago just going to various exhibition shows, just videoing using his little iPhone and just videoing content. And then, of course, he was starting to build an audience, because what he's doing with his content is bringing the audience into the wonderful world of the super yacht.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, he's made these fantastic videos now, and the super yacht manufacturers are realizing this is an audience that we should be tapping into.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then of course luxury towel brands want to get involved with him, and all sorts of other product brand opportunities can come his way.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a guy, I think he's in Kansas. It's not too far from here, but I kind of started watching him because what he would do was he would go out and find an old car or an old truck and bring it back in and kind of walk you through what he was doing to refurbish it. And all the time, it wasn't always putting it back stock. Sometimes he would kind of, fix them up to be muscle cars or mud trucks or whatever. But, I got kind of hooked because it was interesting watching this process. So there are a lot out there, which kind of brings me to the next question I had was the channels. I think as we've progressed through social media, my channel of choice, it depends, but typically just for browsing social media is Instagram. I mean, I just like the pictures. Pictures are 1,000 words. I don't have to read a lot. And that's where I have gravitated. Now I say that unless it's a how-to. Now if I'm trying to figure out how to do something different or figure out a better way, then it's usually YouTube is where I go for that. But is there a is there one channel that stands out where influencers reside, or are they just different ones all? Then I guess, are there different ones for each channel, or do some people transcend where they're on all channels?
Well, it's interesting. Influencer marketing is on all of them in some way, even on Snapchat.
Okay.
But the god of influencer marketing has to be Instagram, for the reasons that it is very visually striking for products in particular, and of course with the shopping links and the way in which you can translate that to a return on investment through activation is very good.
Yeah.
But it does also depend on your product or service. You know, if you were a financier or banker that was, had a particular niche or whatever, you might find that LinkedIn or Twitter is more your sphere.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a far bigger audience on LinkedIn than I do perhaps on Instagram.
Right.
And that is because I've been there. I've been there right at the start, of course,
Yeah.
and it's seen as the professional site. So it's all about where are your likely audience going to be.
Yeah.
Wherever you think they are, and whatever platform you think is relevant, that's where you should be.
Okay.
And also making sure that your profile is consistent amongst all of the. So if you go and have a look at my Instagram, my LinkedIn, my Twitter, my image and profile is exactly the same.
Yeah.
So that people understand. Because as I said to you earlier, a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And what we've got to do is create a reference point that people can remember you. It's very, very cluttered online now.
Right.
Creating cut through and stand out is ever harder. We shouldn't forget YouTube, of course. YouTube is a phenomenal platform for influencer marketing. I mean, do you ever remember a video? I don't know if you called Charlie Bit My Finger. Does that ring a bell for you?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Well, Charlie Bit My Finger is an amazing video. It's created 13 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
And it was just very, very funny, very endearing. Yeah. And it was just literally about a baby and a slightly older brother biting his finger, but in a very gentle way. Anyway, the reason I mention it is it has now got 879 million views.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So the reason I say that is because sometimes people forget that content on video online keeps generating ROI.
Yes.
Whereas you put a flyer through a letterbox, it's thrown in the bin.
Yeah.
You put an advert on a magazine and you might well see it if you're lucky.
Yeah.
You see a TV clip and it's over. The great thing about blogs or video content, it's evergreen. It's
Right.
evergreen.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you make it not date specific, but you make it something that's relevant. I mean, your audience is looking at this. Why do we follow people? Humor, creativity, and trust. Those are the three big words. We either want to be entertained, we want to see something creative and different,
Right.
but we also want to know that we can trust that person.
Yeah.
So always be mindful when you're creating content. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And what you will see is, maybe I'm not searching for whatever topic you have. I may not be searching for it today. And so we forget about, it's the instantaneous, instant gratification society. If I post some content today, if I don't have, a million hits this afternoon or tomorrow, I'm like, oh, that was a total failure. Well, we have to look as the longevity of that. It lives forever. And if we continue to release content out there, it's compounding effect. It just builds and builds, because what I think happens a lot of times is Maybe tomorrow you're searching for something I posted 6 months ago. You read it, but then it leads you to what I just posted in the last week or two. So
Yeah.
definitely, and that was another question I was going to have is to ask is, so tell us, why is this important to me as a businessman, small businesses? Why is influencer marketing important, or why should we look at it more importantly?
Because simply we trust the opinions of others more than we do traditional advertising.
Yeah.
How do you get your brand to stand out more when other forms of marketing media are just not delivering?
Yeah.
I mean, the open rates on emails are getting less and less. Well, they are to prospect.
Yes.
If
Yes.
you're looking at your existing audience, maybe higher, but certainly with people's attention spans are getting less and less.
Yeah.
What we like to do is, you know, we like to listen to the opinions of people that we like and trust, and therefore, if you can have your voice told through others, oh, you should work with Roy. He's a great guy. He's effectively, what you're doing is you're getting loads of referrals and
Yeah.
reference points
Exactly.
from other people. Because if you said you were great, well, you would say that, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but if I say you're great, then
Yeah.
it's different.
Yeah. Or if my mother says I'm great, probably people expect that. No, and I think it's good to, that is a great reason, but I think we also need to look at the cost. As you were saying earlier, if we win a traditional, let's just say a TV spot, there's all the people that you just suggested, the script writers, the production, the equipment, and all of this. Then the biggest part is we have to buy that time on the TV. Then you have to pick that slot. Do I want it to run at the morning news? Is it night? Is it overnight? How, and the cost varies, from the different slots. But I don't know what it is for a local commercial anymore, but I can guarantee you it's a lot of money. Where we think about, and it's not that this is free, and this is something I want to be sure and stress, is that, these content marketers or the influencers, they have spent a lot of time and their own money and energy building up these audiences. And so they are going to be due some kind of compensation, if they help us out. This is not, I don't want anybody to think what we're saying is that these people are going to, we just reach out and they're going to pick us up for free. There's going to be a cost. But I think if we look at the cost of this versus the cost of the traditional media, probably a fraction. And then that second part that you just mentioned is that if it goes up on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, anywhere really, it's going to live there forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, actually, there are some studies that talk about 11 times greater ROI, return on investment, than other forms of marketing media.
Yeah.
And that's why this industry is going to be close to $15 billion in 2022 from just 1.6 billion in 2016. So it is, and that is massive.
Yes.
A massive growth in that period, and it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah.
The pandemic actually has only lifted the industry even more, because more of us are online. More of us have been exposed to watching content creators, TikTok and Instagram and others, and we've discovered influencers, and that I think is really exciting.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, and the one that we had just discussed for a minute before we got on here, I think, is it's a great story, but it was the guy that was, his car broke down, so he's like, hey, I'm going to get my skateboard out. He's singing his song, drinking, I think it was ocean spray juice, and so they did an awesome thing by picking him up, and then, it really just blew up even more for them. So, I think we have to also look for those opportunities where, we can make a big splash as well.
Yeah, I mean, just on that one, I think what makes those videos work really, really well is when it's not so in-your-face advertising. It's seen as almost like product placements.
Yes.
So that it's, I mean, I've actually seen butter brands where they've done almost butter sculpture.
Yeah.
There have been other things where there's been chefs and the product that's being promoted is just on the table there.
Yeah.
It's not just held up like, look at this amazing product,
Yeah.
you know, because actually these a lot of these guys are super smart now. They don't want to do that
Yeah.
because it doesn't really work.
Right.
And they know that because their audience will tell them so.
Right. Yeah.
And let's not forget that the influencers have a vested interest in making a collaboration work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and product placement is it's not something that hasn't been around forever. I think about TV programs and movies. Uh, that's something that they figured out a long time ago. Was instead of me coming out and telling you that, hey, I want you to drink my cola because it's the very best out there, or drink my beer. If James Bond is shown in a movie drinking my beer or my cola, people resonate like, oh my gosh, if it's good enough for James Bond to be drinking it, then definitely I'm going to go out and get some of that. So I think you're right there. It has a huge impact with more of just not being in your face and more of, hey, I use this product. If people think that I'm cool and I'm that influencer, if I'm using that product, then other people are going to probably gravitate to that as well. So,
Definitely.
so let's talk about if I wanted to start this today. I'm, going to jump out there, find me an influencer. Where would we even start? I know our message needs, we need to find the channel, I guess. But let's just go with business. Maybe I want to look through LinkedIn, find somebody on there, and then also I want to tie that into your index. I think that's awesome that you have this index. That do you publish that as well, ever so often?
Well, what we do with the index is, I mean, the top 100, the top 50 type of index isn't new to the society. Publishers and magazine publishers have often done this.
Right.
I think what's particularly different about mine is I'm taking this product offering to trade associations and professional membership communities and saying, well, why don't you're in an authority position. Why don't we help create this top 100 most influential people in the food industry,
Yeah.
in the bathroom and tap industry,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And we work at creating this product offering, and we've had some fantastic reaction to it.
Okay.
Because when you're involving people, they like to be recognized, and what do they do? They're delighted when they are, and they promote it on social media. So the person that's organizing this index sees their brand amplified hugely as a result of what's happening. Because it comes back to user generated content.
Yeah.
And that is one of the biggest growth areas at the moment, is when you've got when you almost the same thing as my membership space. What you want to do is create the pool, create the environment for people to connect with each other.
Yeah.
So you're not doing all of the work. You are facilitating, you're putting nuggets of content in, helping and grow it. And actually, although obviously influencer marketing is what we're talking about today, because I've got a strong background in membership, there's been a massive growth in communities, because people want to feel part of something, and when they can learn from other people that have been attributed to your community, then they will receive their value.
Yeah. So I don't want you to give away the secret sauce, but so what are some of the metrics that go into that list to determine, is it the number of postings that they have, that let's just talk about the food industry, would be the number of postings somebody had on the food industry, kind of coupled with their followers, their engagement. It's just a kind of take a lot of different indexes and kind of wrap them together.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's actually that we'll also look at not just social media. We'll look at Google as well, so to see if they've been in the news. What we'll also do is create a methodology. That one of the problems with some of these top 100 influencer indexes is people can be influential but not have a massive presence on social media, which is what we're trying to change, of course. We find that a lot of younger people have, but a lot of older people haven't. So what we try and do is create a weighting So if they've been in the industry a certain amount of time, that gets them so many points. If they have got a presence and a level of engagement, so it's all driven by sort of a point score.
Okay. Okay.
But what we want to do is we want to shake things up a bit. We also want to work with the association and make sure that we haven't missed anybody. We've got the right people.
Right. All right. And that, yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of threw a bunch of stuff at you there, but let's get back to, okay, so I want to start today. Can you kind of give me like a couple, 2 or 3 steps of things that, how I should go about finding somebody on my channel to deliver my message?
So if you were to go on to Instagram, for example, what the most important thing is what are the hashtags that would be relevant to the services that you provide? So if it's direct marketing, if it's podcasts, marketing podcasts, what we want to do is search those hashtags and see who's talking about those subjects. So that's the first thing. The other thing is to look at your direct competitors and see who is following those people. Yeah? Because if you can find out and scan some of those people, they may well be interested in your audience, but also have quite a sizable audience themselves. Yeah. So there's a couple of things. And I think the other thing is when you are posting content. I had my book launch recently in the UK. I've got the one in America on the 30th of March. But I needed to make sure that I had a lot of engagement on the day of my book launch, because it would be very embarrassing for me to be promoting influencer marketing if I didn't have many followers, or we didn't. So I put this on LinkedIn, and I put a personal picture of me with my books at a table. And the most important thing with any form of posting on social media is the first 2 hours are golden.
Okay.
So if any of you don't know that, is sometimes it's worth considering. If you've got friends and you've got a very important post you've got to get out, I occasionally WhatsApp people and say, look, I'm going to put a very important post out. Would you mind sharing or commenting on it? Okay. And if they do that in the first 2 hours, then all of a sudden, what the algorithms do is push that out quicker and quicker and quicker.
Oh,
yeah?
Okay.
So that's how viral campaigns happen, because people react quickly, i.e. they share and they comment very quickly. That's what creates a viral campaign. That's why it travels quickly.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, lots of times, you'll have put out a tweet or letting you say, oh my God, I've only got 2 views, or I've got, 3 people commenting. It feels like this is a waste of time. And because what it's doing is the algorithm is only sending out that content to a very, very small percentage of your total follower base, as little as 5 or 10%. So once those people comment and like, boom, it pushes it out to more. And if those people like and comment, boom, it pushes it out to even more.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So that is really the sweet sauce. And to prove this worked, I had 16,000 views on that post, 140 comments, and 15 reshares. And that was the biggest one I'd ever had, actually.
Oh, wow.
On LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But the reason that I said it is because I literally asked 3 people at the beginning. I said, would you mind just commenting on that?
Yeah.
And once they did, it then drew other people. Actually, it did work quite organically, I have to say. But if I'm honest, I gave it a bit of a nudge.
Yeah. No, that's a good strategy.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I've also noticed that other people I'm part of a lobbying group for small businesses, and they had what we call a Twitter bomb. Have you heard of that?
No.
Twitter bomb. No. Yeah. So basically, within the community, they say, right, we're going to try and get noticed and even trend. So they tell everybody to put a tweet out or share and like everybody else's tweet at 8 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
At a specific time on a specific day.
Okay.
And because this was involving trying to get the attention of the like Confederation of British Industry or somebody within business or government, they needed to rattle the cage.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I was part of it just to
Yeah.
see how much traffic was going through because it was timed.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, that's a good point. Yeah, and I did want to mention, not only I'm going to give you a chance to, tell people how they can get a hold of you, but wanted to mention your book, Influencer Marketing Strategy, and you said it's going to be available here in the States March 30th. A couple more days, I guess. Probably like
Yeah.
I guess that'd be like on Tuesday. So yeah,
That is on
yeah,
Tuesday. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And actually, if I don't know if when the podcast's going to be out, but we could prove that. We could show if anybody wants to. I am going to do a post on Tuesday. So if any of you are listening and want to go over to my LinkedIn LinkedIn account and want to comment on it, then we can. Hopefully,
Okay.
it will do the same thing
Yeah, I'll
again.
I'll
And,
definitely
and
do
I
that.
will comment. I will like back all of your listeners' responses.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, one question we ask is it well before we go, is there anything else that you want to put out? I've taken a lot of your time, I know that, but just want to see, is there any final words that you'd like to talk about influencer marketing?
I think my final words are give it a try,
Yeah.
and if any of your listeners want to drop me a line through my website or on any of my social media and just want to ask me a question as to, look, I'm
Okay.
thinking about this or I'm in a particular type of business, I'm not sure,
Yeah.
ask me, ask
Okay.
me. I mean, I've put so much in the book, taken me 18 months to write. So it's not just it's really almost like a compendium of knowledge and lots of links to other good sites and influencer platforms and all sorts. There's a glossary of terms, lots of case studies in there. And that I think does help is when you know that somebody else has done it and what results they've had.
Yeah.
But all I would say, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time. But if you do it properly and you do it through the right process, you're going to find some amazing results.
Yeah. All right. Well, Gordon, thanks so much for being here. One wrap up question that we always ask is what is a tool that you use in your daily life, a habit, something, it could be professional, personal, something that you just feel like adds a lot of value to your day?
Oh, right. What do I do? Look, I can't think of anything specific because I do loads of things, but
Yeah.
there's a is it remove background? There's a great little tool called remove BG. I think it's called remove GB. Yeah,
Yeah.
check it out. And tell you what, I've used that so many times now. So when you've got a particular product and you want to remove a certain part of it, it's great. It's an awesome tool and it's free.
Okay, awesome. We'll check that out. All right, Gordon, again, thanks so much. Tell everybody, of course, where we will be able to find your book, number one, when it comes out. Number two, if they want to reach out and, just find out more information about you, what's a good place to do that as well?
Thank you, Roy.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can go over to my website, which is www.gordonglenister.com. You can find me on all of the major social channels. It's going to be in all leading bookstores in America from the 30th, Amazon for sure. I don't know all of the distributors, but it certainly will be. And also, do check out my podcast,
Yes.
which is all about influencer marketing, and that is called Influence, the global podcast on influencer marketing. And that, again, is on iTunes, Spotify, and all the other sort of leading platforms. But thanks again, Roy, for
Okay.
having me as your guest.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome, and we will certainly get you back because this is something that evolves. I mean, if we can figure it out today, we're already behind where we should be. So we'll definitely get you back on. It's been an interesting conversation, and I think this is definitely something that all businesses of all sizes need to look at because of the affordability and the reach and the longevity. There's just so many great things about it. So y'all reach out, pick up Gordon's book for sure, but also reach out to him, see how he can help you get your campaign started and make it a great success. So that's going to do it for another episode of the Business of Business podcast. You can find us, of course, at www.thebusinessofbusinesspodcast.com. We are on all the major social media networks as well as podcast platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to, please reach out. I'd be glad to get us added to that one. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your business.